being with Baba as long as I have, a lot has happened. And he, I must tell you, being with the Avatar is not a dull thing. You can call it anything else you like, but dull it's not. You'll have a very interesting and exciting life. You can just read the books. It's full of the most interesting things that he did. He traveled all over the world. He was not an avatar that just sat in his chair. There's so many yogis and other masters, they just sit there, they expound their views and their thoughts. People sit around, they sit on the carpet or whatever, and they listen. And most of their life of teaching is lived like that. But not with Baba. He went everywhere. He traveled everywhere. He went and he contacted people that the world never even knew anything about. These musts? Whoever knew about a must? God intoxicated people? This was an unknown thing. It was referred to, it was touched upon by other masters. It isn't like it was never anything ever said anything. But with Baba, he revealed who these people really were. Just like you were reading just before what that must said, and how Baba was the one behind everything that was happening, all the good and I don't want to say good and bad. I want to say the working out of people's desires and sanskaras, and it didn't matter if they were in the gross world, just as an ordinary, everyday human being, or whether they were on the higher planes, which we know very little about, other than what Baba himself revealed, which was quite a bit for the first time. It was revealed in spiritual history. But he also told us about the states that is beyond the mind. Now, everything that we do and everything that any scientist will tell you about really has to do with how the mind thinks and what it comes up with and what it experiences. But Baba transcended that into the beyond state, beyond the limited mind. And he did call the mind limited. No matter how vast the cosmos is, no matter how much you can use a microscope to see the most smallest atoms and particles that exist, all of this was within the scope of the mind. And Baba wanted to take us all out of the mind. That was his mission. His mission was to help us come to know the self that is the creator and the maker of this mind. But the mind had a very important use. And when you read the things that Baba explained about what the point of mind is, it was really to evolve consciousness. So you go through an evolution in which consciousness is evolved, and then Baba explains how as a human being, you now have a full consciousness, but it's all loaded up with all the impressions of everything you ever went through throughout your entire evolution, which took ages and ages and ages of time. And then finally, you go and if you go through the spiritual path, you'll advance through these higher planes, which are beautiful and fantastic, and when you get on them, you don't want to leave it, because each time you think, oh, this is so incredibly beautiful, I've never seen anything like it, so stay here, and then he moves you on anyhow. But for his lovers, he does not take them through the spiritual path. He does not take you through these planes. What he does do is he takes you from where you are to where you should be, and that's the state that he's in, the state beyond mind. You go from the limited to the unlimited. And I said, am I going to really like this? I'm thinking to myself, is this something that I want? Will I like it? But then I read about these masters. None of them said that they didn't like it. They achieved this here, and rave about it. This is the thing to do. This is where you, this is you. This is what you have to experience if you want to know who you really are and what your destiny and what your purpose of being born in the first place is. So I wrote a book. It's called Irwin and the Avatar. Irwin is me, by the way, just to clear it up. And it's my true story. This is a picture when I was with Bob at that time. I don't know if you can see it, but anyhow, if anyone wants to look at it, they can come up afterwards. Now, I want to tell you something that Baba explained to us at the East-West gathering, because I had the privilege of being there when Baba brought the East and the West together at that time, which he had wanted to do this for many years, but it wasn't until 1962 that the time was right, and in this when it happened. He brought and it was called the East-West Gathering. Well, at the East-West Gathering, Baba revealed something that was not much revealed before by him. And he had a big chart, and it was on the dais where Baba was all sitting. And this big chart was called the 4 Journeys. The 4 Journeys. That was what it was. And this was the description that he gave of what we all have to experience and what we pass through and what our past was and what our present and what our future is. And this was what Baba explained. And if anyone fell asleep, he'd throw a ball at them and it would bounce off of them and in the back of the room or whatever, and it would look like this, and then Baba would look and they would look and everything would be just fine. And how they were awake. But the 4 Journeys was very important. And it was something that he revealed. And I have it in my book because it was something really for everyone to know about. And I would like to read this. It's called The 4 Journeys. The first journey, this is Baba's words now. This was the first time there was such a chart with his explanation. This is what I have written. He explained how each soul must acquire consciousness in order to know itself as infinite power, knowledge, bliss, and its own existence. Have you ever thought about knowing yourself as infinite power, knowledge, and bliss? I mean, for real, to really know yourself like that? It isn't just words. This is what Baba is here for. This is his mission, to bring you to that. So he's saying this. To accomplish this, each one of us had to pass through the first journey on the chart, starting with the 7 kingdoms of evolution. Waking up from unconsciousness, souls experience the most dimmest consciousness, that of the stone form. Then gradually acquiring more consciousness, he begins to identify himself with the metal form, then plant, then reptile, then fish, bird, animal, and finally consciousness has increased sufficiently to occupy a human form. You know how long it takes to go through all of this here? Can you think of yourself as having evolved through all these forms of fish, animal, reptile? I mean, to have actually done this here? And now you're here as a human being, looking back on your past when they show you pictures of these animals? Consciousness is now complete in the human form, but cannot know itself as infinite, possessing all knowledge, power, and bliss due to the enormous load of mental impressions it acquired through its evolutionary journey. This is Baba's words. The first journey continues when the soul must now get rid of all these impressions that now block its awareness of its true self. Interesting, because the self has no opposites. It is the self. That is the maker of this mind. We'll come to that soon. These impressions are very intense and hardened. They must be shaken up and loosened before they can be eliminated. To accomplish this, a long chain of reincarnations from one human form to another occurs over a span of ages, since it is almost impossible to loosen these impressions that surround the consciousness. Once the impressions are loosened enough, the soul now is ready to enter the spiritual path, which consists of passing through 7 higher planes of consciousness. This now is the actual unwinding of these loosened impressions. Once unwound, the true self is revealed. Nothing is left to block the conscious experience of one's infinite existence. In my life, in my way of thinking, I always try to identify and think of what kind of experience is this that I am, what I'm going to have, or what I am having. How do you fit into that experience? I mean, to actually experience that. So when I was sitting with Baba, I was looking at him and I was thinking, now here's someone who actually has the experience of being infinite, being everything, being everywhere, being in everything, and also being formless. Even though he's informed in his human body, but that's not his real state. And Baba kept telling us at the time, he said, you don't see me as I really am. This is not what I am. So I thought, good, let me see who you really are then. I would love to see that. That was what I'm here for, to see what's really there. And Baba, I must say, I felt he was very amused by my thinking and my way of approach to him. But I was being very real and very sincere. I wasn't just trying to be funny. That was not my point. Then Baba says, just as a drop falls into the ocean to become the entire ocean, so it is when the drop soul touches the ocean of consciousness. It no longer experiences itself as a drop in this ocean, but becomes aware that it is the entire ocean with all of its drops. Again, try to think of yourself having that kind of experience. I don't know, on one hand I say, this is so fabulous, it's so far beyond anything. A science fiction writer would have trouble trying to say something like this because it's so far out, it's so far beyond. Thus the first journey is completed, when the individual's consciousness is freed from all mental impressions and experiences its own self as the Oversoul, as God, enjoying the unlimited power, knowledge, and happiness that was potentially there all along to experience within himself. Thus, God is experienced as one's own true, unlimited self. There is no longer any awareness of the universe which was experienced as an illusion, a vacant dream that he woke up from. Just a dream. Now begins the second journey of the soul, that is now merged in the Oversoul. This soul that completes the second journey is now conscious of the universe again, while maintaining its God consciousness. He has no duty to perform, but enjoys the play of being in the illusory worlds of matter, energy, and mind. He can also make one other soul like himself. You know, of course, some of these things are already written up in the book God Speaks, that Baba has explained. But here he seems to clarify things. The third journey consists of taking on the duty of enlightening others. He then becomes a perfect master who, having become one with God, can make use of the infinite knowledge, unlimited power and everlasting bliss to free others. Such masters also bring down the advent of the avatar in certain ages. When this event happens, he is recognized as the Redeemer, the Messiah, the Prophet, or the Avatar. He becomes the liberator of millions. I must add something to that. The difference between the perfect masters and the Avatar, from what Baba had explained, was that the perfect masters have a limited field of that they enlighten others, mainly those that were connected with them over the ages before they became perfected. But once they become a perfect master, they usually end up, these people that were close to them become their disciples, and they get God realized from them. But in the case of the Avatar, they bring him down for the enlightenment of everybody, of millions of people. He can enlighten millions of people, which is pretty good because we're one of the millions, you see, that come to him to be enlightened. But perfect masters generally only deal with those that were close to them previously. Although they're not limited, they can still, give anyone else enlightenment too. His mission is to free others. He is recognized by his unconditional love. So if a person doesn't know how to recognize whether Meher Baba is the Avatar or not, it's saying right here, he is recognized by his unconditional love. This almighty force wins the hearts of those who come into his orbit. It disarms the mind with all of its impressions, good and bad. He is the expected one. The fourth journey is explained by Avatar Meher Baba on the chart. The perfect master now gives up his links to the illusory universe, which is seen as just a speck in his infinite being. So, when the time comes where the perfect master has to turn over his charge to someone else, that's what happens to him. He enters into what's called this fourth journey, in which he gives up all his links to the universe and to everybody. He now has no further duty to perform. He now enjoys, without limits, the bottomless well of infinite bliss, creativity, unlimited knowledge and power that is within the existence of his everlasting self. When I would hear Baba talking about this, I had to think, how do I make this real to me? Well, this is my destiny. This is what's going to happen to me. This is what's going to happen to us.
When? I'm just kidding.
You know something? It's an excellent question, but that's where it ends.
You don't have an excellent answer?
There is no excellent answer for that, except it'll happen when it's supposed to happen. How does that sound?
Good.
Basically, when circumstances evolve to where it becomes possible for it to occur, then it occurs. But how are you going to know when those circumstances are? It takes, it's just the way he works. He keeps eliminating your whatever blocks you from experiencing that until it's all eliminated. Then you experience. That's the best answer I got for you. It's an answer I give to myself as well.
Can Sally drive back home? If it happens to him right now, can Sally drive back home?
Can Sally drive him back home? Ask Sally. Listen. Sally will be happy to drive him back home. When Meher Baba was given the enlightenment from Babajan, he could barely walk home himself. He was in such a daze. I was reading, well, what actually did what was the experience? What did Baba Jan actually do at the moment when she enlightened him and kissed him like that? And it turns out that Baba was, I read a certain place where he said that everything disappeared. He was the only one in existence. This is what his experience was. All of a sudden he saw he was the only one that existed. That everything else was like an illusion. It was a dream. And then as you understand things more and more, you can understand that, like, in a dream, you create all the characters in your dream. You are everybody. In the universal sense of the universal mind, this is what he was experiencing, that everything was created by him. It was just a dream, like a dream. And that it's only the dreamer that's real. It's not the dream that's real, or any of the objects in the dream. It is only the dreamer that's real. But the dream at the same time is all the things that is in the dream. All the objects in the dream. Everything. So when we come to know our true self, we see that we're the maker of all that we thought was other than ourselves previously. It's very interesting, because this was always a question I had. How does God see himself as everything? I mean, how do you do that? See yourself as everything? And if you understand it as a dream, that the mind is the dream maker, then it's understandable, and it's not hard to understand that the dreamer is real. The dream, he makes up everything. So for us to experience our true self, then that's what you experience. You experience yourself where Baba is not someone else. He's your own self. He's been your own self forever. You come home to what you are. There is no one else out there, you see. And the oneness is why in all the religions they even say, God is one. Every one of them say that. God is one. One what? One who? What? But the explanation isn't really there. But then when Baba explains how this oneness is there, that it's not two, it's one, it's not hard to understand, actually. It's quite simple. And but to get the experience of it, you see, we have the understanding of it. We can talk about it and understand what we're saying. Baba can explain it, and we can understand it. But to experience that is what it's really all about, until you experience it. But at least you rub shoulders with the avatar, it's going to get you a little closer, right? It has to. It's your own self there. I have something here which I also wanted to tell you. This is a poem actually that I wrote. It's in my book. It's called The Dreamer. The Dreamer. I can't help dreaming. It's something I do a lot. I'm a born dreamer. I'm doing the same thing the big dreamer does. It is said, life is a dream. But whose dream? Not mine. I didn't invent this. I was born into it. What will I do next? What will happen to me next? Who is writing the script? How does he make it look so real? How did I really get here into the big dreamer's dream? Someone tell me. My dreams are petty compared to yours, but this is all I can do. The big dreamer likes his dream. Sometimes he visits here, talks to his dream people, gives them their own dreams in his dream. Then he came to me. He said he will wake me up. This is great. Finally, I will know who I am, not just some character in a dream. At last I will know what it is to be me, the big, awake dreamer of everything. My poems. I have 5 more minutes. Well, what will I say? It takes 5 minutes to say it.
I know what you can say. Tell us about when you were with Mayor Baba and that picture was taken. Tell us about that
This
moment.
here picture?
Just
Yeah.
being with Mayor Baba. What describe that, please?
Okay, that's a good question. The first impression that I had was when Baba, well, I'll just describe the scene. The car drove up to Guru Prasad, and Baba was standing on the balcony, and he was motioning like this, and Meherji, who drove me there, was saying, Baba's calling you. So I scampered out of the car and went over to Baba, and in the meantime, as I'm going there, Baba goes inside the Guru Prasad, inside a room, and I follow in there, and Baba's sitting in his chair, and there's about 15 people in the room, and I go over to Baba, and Baba just puts his arms out, and he grabs me up, and he kisses me on this side, and kisses me on that side, and has me sit down next to him, and I felt like a long-lost son that had one day come home. That was it. Nothing supernatural. Just like a long-lost son that had been running around the universe, wherever you go, and now I was home. Now I was here. So Baba asked me. He asked me how I had come, and I said, Baba, I was able to come because it was your will. And there is a story about that. I'm not going to go into it now. He gave me about 3 more minutes left, you see. So anyhow, I said, Baba, it was your will that I was able to come. And Baba, as soon as I said that, Baba went motioned like this to repeat it to everybody, to the group in the room. So I said, I'm here because Baba had made it possible. And it was because I had so much desire to see Baba that it was where Mani had sent a family letter at that time saying Baba would be entering seclusion for 6 months. And it had already been 6 months that I had been wanting to see him. So I said, oh, this is terrible, you know. And then it said in the letter that Baba would enter seclusion, and during which time he would not be receiving visitors, nor would he be receiving any communication, except as a telegram. You could send a telegram. So that was too much for me. So I became desperate. I know, what am I going to do? I have no money to go, and it was a real problem. And my dad at that time was all against everything, and so it was a problem. So I decided finally, out of desperation, I wrote to Baba. And I said to Baba in that letter, I said, Dear Baba, I want very much to have the benefit of your love, your direction, and your guidance, but I don't have the money to make the trip, and I can't see where money should stand in the way of such an ideal. But I know if it is your wish, and it is your will, I'll be able to go, providing it's your will. So I turned the whole thing over to him in that letter. Back comes a letter with one line in it. Don't worry, circumstances will adjust themselves. Love, Mayor Baba.
Wow.
The end of the story is 2 weeks later I'm there, and he had me repeat it to everybody. Mayor Baba, James A. Baba.